Sounds good. All right, we can go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order at 5:10 p.m. on 5/29. We'll go ahead and start out with a roll call. Mr. Bell.
Present.
Ms. Diaz.
Present.
Dr. Finley, here. Ms. Holguin.
Here.
And Ms. Carroll.
Here.
Excellent. Thank you. Everyone is here and accounted for. I will go ahead and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Alrighty, board, we're going to go ahead and move on to item number 4, which is the adoption of the agenda. Can I have a motion, please?
So move to adopt the agenda?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Bell, second by Ms. Carroll. Any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, request to address the board. Do we have any items of public comment?
No comments.
All
Mr.
right.
President.
Lock the doors, huh?
Thank you very much. Okay, next item up then is the presentation on the third interim financial report for the period ending in April 30th, 2024. And I believe, is Ms. Bell doing that?
Yeah, I just wanted to check with the board. Would you like her to present here or at the podium?
I think that we have our
Yeah,
copies.
I
I don't think it's a need for us to turn this way. It will be easy
So you
to
want
do.
to just present it right there?
We like the way you look right there anyway. Gotta fix it. We can't find nothing. We can't buy new ones. Gotta make it work. I'm just-
So it seems like I haven't been here in a long time. So I'm coming to you today to present third interim. And the reason we have to present third interim because we filed qualified first interim and second interim. So because of that, we have to produce a new third interim report. And so this is where we are. Next slide, please. So this is our 25-26 multi-year projection.
Look at you.
I like it. Thank you. Next slide, please, Dr. Hillman. Thank you. This is our multi-year projection, and it's a comparison from second interim to third interim. So you'll look at the unrestricted and the restricted revenues and the total expenditures. But what I want you to remember, instead of going down each line, I want you to look at when we closed at the second interim, we were having a committed leftover was negative $8 million. And since then, in third interim, as we begin to look at our projections and look back at what we were doing, now we're at a negative $5 million. So it's 5.2. So somewhere, somehow, we came up with $2.9 million. This is because we looked at our expenditures and our resources and started making adjustments. So where we were at second interim at $8 million, now we're at $5 million at third interim.
See the last.
We were at $8 million
Right.
negative,
Okay.
our cash, and now we are at $5 million. So we've made adjustments to about $2.9 million. Next slide. This is our multi-year projection assumptions. This is when I show you our current year and our 2 out years. Our out year is what made us qualified. It means that we would not be able to cover our expenses. So you'll see that our revenue in 23-24 was about $60.8 million. In 24-25, you see that our revenues went down to $50 million. And then in 25-26, it is expected to be at $49 million. You then will look at your expenditures, and in 23-24, we were at $59 million, and you see that it was about $1 million difference in the revenues. And then you come to 24-25, and you see that our expenditures are more than our revenues at $55 million, and our revenues at $50 million. You then look at 25-26, and this is the year that they say that this is when we should pay attention, because this is the year we would not meet our financial goals. And you see that our expenditures remain at about $55 million, and our revenues have not increased, and they're at $49 million. You continue to go down, and you see the difference between the deficit, and you see it about $8 million going across until you get to 24-25, and then you see 25-26. You look down at the bottom, our 3%. This is 3% of our total expenditures, and this is our money for our economic uncertainties, and we have about $1.7 million. Remember that it takes $3.8 million to pay payroll. Then you
To
see our,
pay what? I'm sorry.
to make payroll
Oh, okay.
And sorry, you said that was 3.8
is
per,
$3.8
per,
million.
per month
Yes,
per
sir.
payroll, okay.
And you look at our committed leftover in 24-25, we would have about $3 million in reserve, and in 25-26, which is the year that we continue to focus on, and we would be in a deficit of $5.2 million. So what has happened, next slide, since second interim? These are our decreases. So our ending balance was $8.1 million in the whole, and then now today it's $5.2 million for fiscal year 25-26. Our expenditures decreased. We had a reduction of our routine restricted maintenance from about $2 million to about $1.9 million. And then our expenses decreased. We're looking at our services and our salaries, $100,000 per certificated, classified, benefits and services. If you look at the next slide, your supplemental concentration, and if you remember, this is what we've been working on from day one, that we say that we usually would like to be around 70%, and we haven't been 70% in the last maybe 5 years. We've continued to decrease to about 60, 63%, and the closer we get to 55%, we start losing money in the supplemental concentration grant. And so you see from 22-23 the decrease, and from to 25-26, that's $4.2 million. Remember, your supplemental concentration is money that you get for your foster youth, your low income, your English language learners, your homeless students. And your free and reduced. And so this is that part where we talk about your free and reduced meals. Next slide. These are revenue enhancements. So because of where we are, it is our goal and our duty to find additional revenues to sustain the district. And so going forward, so far, since second interim, these are the things that we have earmarked and that we have forecasted out. We have brought back our international students program, and we are hoping to book at least 100 international students for the summer session. We're starting the international students program, forecasting in 24-25 for the fall. We have about 6 students, and we would get ADA for those students at least $13,000 per student. We have our Crestfield development. We've received an initial deposit that will be available in September of $200,000 from our escrow account. We have a second deposit of $500,000 after our due diligence, and that should be paid in September also. And then we have a third extension deposit for $250,000 in September of 2025, not 05. And then again, and we should receive additional funds for closing at $550,000 and $250,000 in March of 2025. Our department has continued to review our stipends to our employees, our overtime and extra time pay, to make adjustments and processes and procedures for that going forward. We have reclassified expenditures for services, contracts, and positions in the future and ongoing, and that we estimate about 198 new student enrollment. 80% of the students have not been at Duarte Unified, so we can book maybe about $1 million for that.
You said they have not or they have enrolled?
They have never enrolled in Duarte, so these are new students.
How did that happen? We can talk.
Dr. Hillman is also.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, we
as,
can talk about it later.
okay,
Yeah.
thank you, Mr. Bell.
I'm sorry about that. I
So our
got
next.
excited. I'm sorry.
Me too. Next slide, please. So our next steps are to continue to file certified. So we will, I'm sorry, we don't want to be certified, qualified. We will submit the third interim report to LACO, and we will submit a budget stabilization plan to LACO when we do our public hearing on June 13th. Are there any questions?
I have a question. I'm glad we found the almost $3 million, but how was that missed? How did it manifest? Did
Well,
you aggressively?
It wasn't missed.
It wasn't missed, but.
No, it wasn't missed,
Okay.
so it was reallocated.
Okay, reallocated.
So what happens is that we go back and look at different expenses and resource codes,
Mhm.
and we adjust to that, depending on certain grants and money that has come in. Then we can adjust resources.
Okay, yeah, it's complicated because the budget, I guess there's so many different things, money is moving around, so it can't, be it's a lot of money. So I'm glad it was found. I mean, that's a good thing about it, that we have that. But now, so for the next year, like the revenue enhancements, that's for the next coming year. That's going to help with the money that we're in deficit with, the 5 million.
Yeah,
By
that's
5.2
correct.
million?
Go ahead,
Okay.
go ahead.
Revenue enhancements are just that. So we bring more money in to enhance the revenue, to add to the revenue.
So those are the positive things
That is
we're now
correct.
looking forward to
Correct.
bringing that's going to help us out.
And I would extend and add that as we have done, and I would say that between Ms. Bell, Dr. Hillman, Mr. Crosby, and their respective teams, probably over the last, let's call it the last 4 weeks, those teams have probably put in upwards of, I'll just say a couple hundred hours of really culling through the data. So I'm getting all the plosives on the mic. Culling through the data, really looking at every resource code, looking at every single program, reanalyzing state guidelines, state protocols of what can be, what types of expenditures can be tacked to certain types of programs. We're learning even more. We're learning that there's some additional flexibility where we didn't know that. It wasn't necessarily clearly communicated. So I would echo Ms. Bell's sentiments. It wasn't that there were issues that were missed. It was new understandings of what the flexibilities are in the regulations and where we could actually move expenditures out of things that we may have thought before were restricted, but maybe we could move those, actually what we thought were restricted that we couldn't use, that we can now use, freeing up more general fund. And also revenue enhancements where we're expanding and building more around international student programs, more of the realities of what our Crestfield property development, Andrews Duarte, the realities of those things are coming to fruition. So those revenue enhancements. And Mr. Bell, to your question a little bit ago around those new students, remember that's a part of our expansion at CS Arts to 6th grade as well. So now those newly enrolled students, those newly enrolled families, and remember, through our, was it 3, Dr. Hillman, or 4 preview days that we did this year? I think we did 3? We did 4. So through our 4 preview days, I would estimate that roughly 4,000, people, about 1,000 people each time, or I don't even know if 1,000 people, 1,000 student options, potential enrollees, showed up for those preview days. And that's now yielding additional students for us. And because we now have operationalized that change, now we can tack into the budget some revenue expectations of what we would get from those programs on the go forward. So that's where you're seeing some of those. Now, you might ask the question, well, why didn't you report that at second interim? Well, because at second interim, we didn't know what those programs were going to yield yet. That became clear when we finalized those numbers with CS Arts this spring, after we closed on second interim, but now we have the opportunity to report it to you now. So that's why it's coming in now.
And so let me add also that a budget, you have to recall, is a working document throughout the year. So we will have increases and decreases throughout the year, and we report that throughout every interim. There was a positive flow, there was a negative flow. It's the same thing. This time I was showing you the comparison between second and third because second is where we qualified for the second time. And I want to make sure that you understood that the third time, this is what has happened since the second interim. But the budget is a year-long process, and it changes throughout until you get to your unaudited actuals. And those are your final numbers. So it will change throughout the year.
I have one more question too. The International Student Summer Program, the one that says between 100 and 150, how much does that bring? Do we know?
It depends on the classification, if it's a B1 or F1 student.
Okay, and this is a summer this is a summer program? Okay, the summer program. I know, because I did two exchange students, several, last year, and I did one a couple years back too. And it brought in, of course, it's a great source of ADA for, if they do it, it's like having, our own students here. So it's a great, perfect way to really help us out. And we could, in Duarte, we accept, I think, any students that want to come here. I know other schools don't. They actually maybe will say they'll only take 5 or so many, like in the school that Mr. Crosby's kids go to. They're very selective how many they take, but we'll take as many as possible. We can.
The summer program is per week, so it's the students per week. And then the school year is per the school year.
And to add on to what Ms. Bell just shared, I would say that the B2 visa, which is the short stay, those are great, I guess, exposure opportunities and recruitment opportunities, thank you, where we bring in a large number of students in hopes that they would then turn from a B2 visa into an F1 and then a J1. So those turn into those short 1-week stays, turn into a full year matriculation, multi-year matriculation. And that has happened. And the board will recall that we've made significant investments, and I know that Mr. Bell has been instrumental in developing this international student program in consultation and collaboration with Mr. Morris over at MIT, Mr. Haro, as well as Araceli Sanchez as our point person. But we had a little bit of a pause and a hiatus because of COVID-19. So COVID-19 put a real damper on our ability to open our doors, open our schools. Now that demand is returning. And so we are strategically positioned in such a way that we'll be able to welcome international students on a short-term basis, but then also we've got infrastructure in place to be able to also take on longer-term students for the full-year stays as well, which can be a very, very good source of revenue for the district.
Very interesting, very interesting.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do we know approximately how many kids will be applying for the full
Summer?
school year, the international?
So for the full year, they've told me 100, but I've asked for confirmation for that. You said international?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
international.
Yeah, but it's 100 for the summer.
So long-term, we have, I'm sorry, long-term, we have approximately 6 to 7?
Yes.
Correct. Now, again, to extend on that, the short-term stays, if we do 100 during the summer, then we also take the opportunity to do some, we've done them over spring break, we've done them over, I don't think we've done winter recess, but I know we've done spring break is another. And we have done some in January coming back out of winter recess, where we can bring in a couple hundred. It's not as, it's a much smaller dollar amount per student, but again, it's the opportunity to expose twofold the students who then go back and tell their families, that was a great place, I'd love the opportunity to go back, but also our exposure to the agents who then it's their business model is to go and find international students all over the world that would want to come to a place that's welcoming like ours. Our district has been exceedingly welcoming to students from other countries, and then when they walk on our campuses, they're welcome, they quickly assimilate, they become a part of the student population and the student culture rapidly because of the type of leadership that we have at those school sites to welcome them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Board, other questions?
I
Yeah.
say congratulations for the pathway. I mean,
Thank you.
this is something that was talked about, but whatever you have done and whoever has been doing it has made a big difference, because it was something that was, on paper, was supposed to happen. But your efforts and your staff, I appreciate it, because that was the whole purpose in the beginning, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
And it's right on time.
All right, I've got some questions here. So on the slide, that what's happened since the second interim about the decreases, can you talk a little bit about the expense decreases by 800K and sort of what, it sounds like we're getting rid of staff with these, or decreasing benefits. So I'm just wondering what those numbers kind of represent.
Those are people that left. We didn't get rid of anybody.
Okay. Well, that's what I thought. I was
didn't
like,
do
why? Okay, so this is people
Natural
that have
attrition.
retired or
Yes, sir.
okay,
We
thank
got
you.
rid of
Just wanted
nobody.
to be clear about that. Awesome. So yeah, so it's I'm really encouraged by the fact that, yeah, we're almost $3 million better off than we were from second interim. Makes me feel like we should do a fourth interim just to see what happens.
We just do budget drops.
Yes. So the other, I have a couple more questions. So on the supplemental and concentration dollars, so that's over from 22-23 to out to the projected revenues in 25-26. That's almost a little over a $2 million drop. So is that recoverable, or are we really having people that are not filling out the form and we can go after them, or is it just that people don't qualify?
She wants to answer.
Okay, all right.
Dying.
She's
I got-
itching to
I
talk.
got this
Okay.
one. Well, there was a time too that the state gave us extra supplemental and concentration dollars. So you'll see it there, it's reflected. We're typically around $4 million with our S&C monies, and this is, so we're getting back to the norm.
Okay.
There was the bump was because of, due to COVID and in response to COVID, we got an increase, a nice little injection.
Okay.
Which is great, but it goes away.
Okay. So this graph here then makes it seem worse than it actually is.
Well, it feels worse.
feels
but,
worse.
But we still need to address the fact that our supplemental concentration numbers are down.
Yes.
The percentage is down, and when the percentage is down, then we lose money in the concentration.
So I guess then kind of to get back to my original question, with the number of students being down, is that something we can recover by going after them? Or is it if they filled out, it's like, well, they don't qualify anyway, so it didn't really?
No, always.
Okay.
This is what we, when we did it, maybe last year, I think it was, first interim, then second interim, the numbers went up because we pushed for them to turn in their papers, to turn in their forms.
Okay.
We need to always at least be back at 70, and we're not. We're about 63 now.
Okay.
So the closer we get to 55, we start losing money.
Right.
So we need to push to bring it back up. And we've done that. We've done incentive programs that we put computers in the offices so parents could fill them out. We put them in their homework folders. We've even said, hey, if you do it, you get a pizza party. Whose class is going to get all the papers in?
Yeah.
Short of knocking on doors. And that's where we're at our next steps,
Okay.
to try to bring the paperwork in. But we always want to bring the paperwork in so we can see who qualifies, and if we can bring the numbers up. We don't just want to give up.
Right. Yeah, because I seem to remember that for each percentage increase, it was like $60,000 or $70,000
Yes.
for each percent.
You
So-
remember.
Of course.
I love it.
So yeah, that is important. All right, so other question I had was for the Crestfield development, these deposits that are coming in through escrow, we had discussion about the development of this property and how it's sort of a, long timeline with all the development, or not developments, entitlements that have to be sorted out and everything. So let's just say it falls through. It doesn't happen. What happens to this money? I know. I just want to know, are we, do we get to keep that money? Do we have to pay it back? What happens with that?
We would definitely talk to our attorneys.
Okay.
what she said, and also, yeah, the immediate thing I thought about is revisiting the actual language in the ENA, because there are some obligations that are built into the ENA where we hit certain benchmarks where the money is locked with us.
Gotcha.
Once we
Okay.
hit certain thresholds, like at least a portion of it stays with us, and not all of it goes back. But we're going to do everything we can to not have this thing fall apart.
Okay, all right, sounds good. Two more questions. So with this projected budget that we were looking at, does that include the tentative agreements that we have with CSEA and DUEA already, or is that not
No,
including
that's
those?
your projected budget in June.
Okay. Gotcha, okay.
It's
All
one
right.
time.
That is great. And then last question is, so, you know, we were able to reallocate things and use funds from restricted that allowed us to then free up unrestricted dollars, but we're still projected to be in the hole by about $5 million. So I guess in the next steps, you have submit an updated stabilization plan to LACO in essentially 2 weeks. So is the thought then that we will find another $5 million in 2 weeks? Or, I mean, I'm just wondering, like, what happens when we submit something that has us still not looking
So the
good?
budget stabilization plan is like a growth. So it's trying to show you what we will do and what we can do. And they want actual facts this time. Before we provide things that are negotiable, we said furloughs and things like that. This time we want to say there will be layoffs given this particular day. We want to see what expenditures did you move. They want to see actual things that are not negotiable.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we have to do. $5 million, I can't say that we will find it before we do this in 2 weeks. I'm very hopeful that we can. But remember, this is for the out year. So we're saying
Yeah.
this 24, 25 is 25, 26 when we're looking at that year that's negative.
Right.
And then 26, 27 is a lot bigger too. So we have to look further out, and we have to make a plan that sustains more than just 1 year.
Okay.
So when I'm telling you that we're moving expenditures and moving things, we have to make sure those things are in the plans, that it doesn't happen to like what happened now. We use COVID money to save us, and now we have to recover for using that COVID money. We don't want to be in that situation again. So
Mhm.
we're looking very carefully at our resource codes. We're looking at what plan goes with what, and we have to make a statement to LACO to say, this is what we are going to do, not what we want to do or what we should do. This is what we are going to do, and this is what we've done. And
Okay.
then we have to continue to do that until we're back positive.
Right, and I've been reading the updates from CSBA about this Prop 98. What do they call it? The fiscal maneuver
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it doesn't look good. Like we're all of a sudden going to get a big windfall in a couple of years or something. It looks like it's going to be a lot of belt tightening for several years to come. So the plan is then for us to have a budget stabilization plan that maybe doesn't recover all 5 million, but gets us well on our way to doing that, which will allow us to then take additional steps as needed in the future
That
for
is
future
correct.
budgets. Okay,
That is correct. It outlines what we should do
okay,
and what we're going to do. I want to say should is what we're going to do.
yeah. No, well, yeah, we don't really have choices.
We don't have any more choices because we still have to address our decline in enrollment and our special ed that encroaches our general fund. So those are always in the background. So our job is to find additional revenues to sustain us.
Okay.
In addition, and I see your hand, Mr. Bell. I shared a little bit ago the work that the teams have already been doing. Well, they weren't doing that work expressly just for the third interim. They were doing that work in preparation for the budget adoption as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the level of depth and the level of scrutiny and every single kind of stone they're turning and every lever that they're pulling to find every expense that can be reallocated, every revenue enhancement, they're gonna do the work to find those things, and I think it will continue to make the picture a little bit clearer and a little bit better. But there's significant work that has to get done, I think, to restructure, redesign, reorganize the district as a whole to operate in a kind of a new reality. And I would agree with you that whatever the Prop 98 fiscal maneuver, sounds like some of the air is being taken out of that balloon with some stuff I read today. But notwithstanding, I don't think that it is in our best interest as a district to build our future on the hopes that we think that the state will provide, but rather control the design of our programs, the design of our services, the design of our schools, and in order to be fiscally healthy, responsible, et cetera, which this team is absolutely committed to doing. And doing that work right now, we're not waiting.
Very good. All right, thank you very much. And Mr. Bell, did you have
Yeah, I
something?
did. How did, who awakened the international program with those students? That, to me, is something we should have done a long time ago, and I'm not trying to get on anybody, but I'd like to say kudos to whoever did that. I mean, that was something
Yeah.
that could have really been done.
I can respond to that. That was Kevin Morris.
Okay.
That is Louis Haro. That is Araceli Sanchez.
She's very sharp.
Yeah, that is you. That is also, it's also Aaron Fish, Kelly Lawson, Jenny Romero, because you can't have an international student program without principals who are ready and willing, Esther Tamanaha, who are ready and willing to take on what actually has to happen to accommodate those students. If you're going to have a group of 40 students come in, most people look at that as that's going to be a disruption to my school. Our principals look at it as an opportunity to build bridges and create a sense of community and an opportunity for us to expand our growth and input, influence of our programs. And so I think it's a fundamental mindset, and there's a number of people that have been instrumental in that. And I think we're just scratching the surface on what it actually could be.
You can certainly let them know that this board really, this board member really appreciates it, because this was funds that we were counting on back when we were going to the,
Yeah.
so thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Raina.
And, may I? Absolutely. Thank you. What Mr. Bell was referring to, is he talking about students that come for 1 week or 2 weeks or the whole year?
All the above.
Okay.
Yeah, we're talking all the above. We're talking short stays and long stays.
The short stay that we really benefit, or
We do.
how about,
Yeah,
okay.
we do in a different way, because the short stays, those are, we collect fees for those. Those fees we turn around and we support right back to the school sites that host those students. And that again is an incentive to the principals to want to host students, because there's some revenue that comes back to them as well. But I think from a broader standpoint, it just cast to all of those agents who are trying to place hundreds, if not thousands, of kids all across the region and across the state, that they then look to Duarte to say that's a place where I would want to put our students. And it's because of us seeding that in these types of short stay programs as well. So it's a combination of both.
Okay, because I remember, I don't know if it was last year or 2 years ago, that our district couldn't host the students, and so they went to CSR.
That's correct. So a little history on that. I see Mr. Crosby kind of stiffen his back up a little bit there. There was a little bit of there was a lack of clarity between the association and the district at that moment in time, and there was a little bit, and it had to do with we were coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic and whether we were going to or not going to. Mr. Crosby, am I characterizing this accurately? And so we partnered with CSR because those students were basically already en route.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. I do have a couple of questions. Like last year, how many students that we have that were in our school that were going to CSR? I mean, yes, this recently year. I mean, yes.
She's speechless, don't worry about it.
Last year, we had a current year, I would say.
Yeah,
We
okay.
have approximately, We're friends. This current year, we have about 160 students who are in the CS Arts program for 7th and 8th grade. Those are students who are enrolled in our schools and we're collecting the ADA on. We're projected this next year to have upwards of 270.
Okay,
So we have a
Okay.
net gain. We were replacing the ones, because some of them will leave and some of them will come in. But it's
Oh,
a
I
net,
see.
it's an actual gain of another 100, over 100 students from what we had this year.
okay, thank you. How do we calculate the international students to come? How do we get that number, like, what, 11, 8 students, whatever is coming? Did they apply?
They applied, so there's a company that RSLA works with, and then she called me and said we should have about 40 students for like the first week in July, 25 the next week, 25, and that's how we came up with about the 100 number for the summer program, and that she had confirmed 6 students for the fall.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And you mentioned that we have the information there. 1 month certificate and classified salary and benefits are $3,634,349.72 a month. What is the total a year? If you could
Oh, a
tell-
year?
Yeah.
Times 12?
12?
I don't know. Times 10. Well, it depends. Some people 10, some people 12.
Yeah, the only reason that I ask is because when you say 3 million a month, 3 million a month, but when you add 10 months, so, I mean, you can hear the difference between what is our budget and what do we spend and certificate and classify. And so that makes a huge difference. And at the end, we know that you are doing the work, and we appreciate that, but at the end, we know that we are responsible to approve whatever it comes to us. So the board has a lot of responsibilities too on this, and sometimes we do put a lot of attention on the numbers, and sometimes we see the numbers and we say, well, what is she talking about? She will explain it to me today, but it's not the way that we should do it, right? We should ask all the time. And I really appreciate what you do, and I can tell you that I have gone to, Mr. Bell has done it more than I, but I know that at least many doing presentations and everything, but at the end, we ask you in your report, and you give us the right information, and based on what you report to us, we make the right decisions, right? And so I do appreciate that. I just don't like to hear good information, good question, and just that. But how did and they already asked this question to you, but how can you find a couple of $1 million? How can,
So there's a lot of things that you have to do with the budget. So in the beginning of the year, well, in, say June, when we adopt the budget, we look at our expenses and where we were. And you just like you would do at your house, like this is $20, so I'm gonna budget $35. I mean, you might over budget. You don't ever wanna under budget. You might over budget whatever these expenses are, whatever, how many teachers, everything goes into it. Which department, which school sites, how much money they get, which programs they get, all those things are there. There's resource codes, there's like an account string. So it's like 7 categories, your location, which fund, what resource, what's the goal. All those type of things are in process when you're doing this. And so when you start your expenditures, you're spending the money accordingly, and there's plans. So in those plans, you can, the restricted money, you can only spend this for this. You can only do this for this. Unrestricted, a little bit more freedom. And so with that, a little bit more freedom, so we give you a little bit more money on that side. And sometimes we come up short because of that. And so then when we start looking at it, so we meet with our sites once a month. We give them their budget and we go over it so we can always know where we are, so we're not out of line. At the end of the year, we're trying to recoup and try to figure out how to adjust expenditure. So we're meeting with them throughout the year. And so with that, you start looking at different things. Well, maybe I can move this part of this person's salary to this program because this program says a teacher has to have 2 legs. You know, something as simple as that. But before, we might have just had you here. And we're like, we're getting a little short. So why don't we move this over to this side? And so it's that. So it's not a miss. It's a recalculation. And so
Okay.
that's what I was explaining to you, that the budget is a working document throughout the year. So when we're meeting with the sites, we're adjusting every time. We're like, oh, be careful, you're getting close. This is this, because a lot of the times, and Dr. Hillman will tell you, at the end of the year, we have lots of money left. And then we have our sites scrambling, and they're all on Amazon. Okay, we want straws, we want water bottles. And we're like, no, no, no. We could have probably allocated that money here. So we try to make sure that at the end of the year, we're not scrambling. We have this bucket load of money here because we didn't pay attention. But we're paying attention every month. So the sites have budget meetings, and each department has budget meetings, so we can see where it is. So when we're estimating, and that's what second interim was an estimate. This is what we think. Because we go back and forth, like I remember last year, we allocate, say, $8 million in special ed, right? And we kept saying, this is a lot, this is a lot. And Dr. Emerson said, keep going back, go back, go back. But we really only spent $6 million. So why are we putting 8? Because I'm more conservative. I want a cushion. Because what if we go over? Now we're negative. So now I got to figure it out. So there's always a cushion. So the adjustments come from the cushions. So it's not like, oh my God, there was $2 million to pay out into salaries. No, there's $2 million to put in the right form, to put in that right budget line. So that's what happens.
Okay.
Can
And
Can I add to that,
Sure,
Board
go
Member
ahead.
Diaz? I would say this year, when the board hopefully adopts the recommended budget that we put forth to you on June 13th and again for adoption on June 27th, that you all approve that budget, knowing that on July 1 at like 7:15 a.m., the budget's off. It's wrong. Because it's a living, breathing document. Like, no matter what the best possible estimates we make, we're going to be wrong. And it's constantly, to Ms. Bell's point, it's constantly a look at it, reposition, readjust, reallocate, reposition, readjust, reallocate. And again, as guidelines, regulations, rules change, let me put it this way. I'm just going to speak frank for a second. We can get some guidance from the state and or from the county in August, and then revised regulations and guidance in February. Well, we follow the guidance that you gave us in August, and so we allocated to that program based on that. Now when you tell us in February we can do something different, now we can retack expenditures, move money all around, and now next you know we freed up some different things, right? So I would just encourage the board to continue to work with the team on understanding that it's always going to be a very delicate balancing and just a dynamic push and pull of being able to move, reallocate, reposition, the dollars. I'll give you an example. Mr. Crosby, did we have any positions that remained vacant the entire year this year? So that's money that was earmarked, basically spent on paper, but never spent in reality, because that was earmarked and encumbered for a position that never got filled. At the end of the year, you can then decide, well, let's just de-encumber that money, and that money can then move back to the general fund in some cases. And then you say, well, if it was left vacant for the entire year, do we really need that position? Well, just now you can make a decision, especially given where we are right now. We just make the decision, no, we don't need that position. And I'm not saying that that's what we're saying, but I'm saying that's the type of work that happens.
And I do understand that, and that's why I ask these kind of questions, because later on, sometimes we got people who called us and said, oh, but you are hiding money from us. And we need to have that information to say, no, we are not hiding money. But we are getting prepped for the future, no matter what. But we are not hiding that money. And that's a big difference when we have the information to answer the right, give the right answer. So for me, it is very important to make clear that people can hear this kind of conversations that we have, these presentations, because they know what we are doing is transparent.
And I would encourage you, when you get these conversations, that they can go back and look at the YouTube, look at the board meetings, because this comparison that I did today is no different from any comparison that I've done since I've been here. I always tell you where we were first interim, where we are second interim, and now we are here. It's just third interim, and now we have long faces. It's the same report. It's just something different. And I've always showed you, this is we went up or we went down. I've showed you consistently. And to tell people that we're hiding money, I always tell them it's like me coming to your class teaching math. I think I know how to add, but I can't teach it the way you do. So to adjust and look at a budget book that is over 500 pages and go to page 20 and say, oh, I found $2 million, they're hiding money. I'm like, do you know how big this book is? It just takes a lot more to do
Exactly.
it than,
Yes.
so if you want to sit down, and my door is always open, I tell everybody, come in. We have a big screen, we have table, and we have snacks. Come in and I'll explain whatever it is you need to know.
That's great. That's really great that you have your doors open. And
Always.
I believe that in my 27 years, I've been invited to just the person in charge. You and I were in that room and you explained to me the whole budget and everything. I think it's the first time that I did. So not that I didn't understand before the past years, but at least I have a clear, understanding. But I also would like to ask, in the free or reduced lunch, that we have, what is the percent that of the students that have, parents that have filled the application to get that? Because I understand that if they don't fill the application, we don't get the money, right? So,
I'd have to get back to you. I don't know that number off the top of my head. how
Okay.
many, so I can get it from Mr. Bowles.
yeah, I mean, if we need to look for money anywhere, I think that we need to, if we offer pizza parties or,
Yeah. And-
we need to have that.
Yeah, thank you, Board Member Diaz, for that. And I think it expands on Ms. Bell's point, which is we've tried to do some incentives. Remember, we had a little bit of a challenge because there were multiple mixed messages that folks were getting. The first thing was, during the pandemic, everybody got food regardless.
Right.
We didn't need any documentation. We didn't need any forms filled out. Everybody got fed. Absolutely the right thing to do. Absolutely correct. Coming out of COVID-19, California passed a universal meals program. So now again, the state has now supplemented and provided funding so all students can eat. However, the feds didn't change the regulations for needing those applications to determine our unduplicated counts, to then determine our federal funding, and also then UPP counts with respect to determining S&C allocations. So we're still driven by a form that we need for compliance, but programmatically and just operationally, families are like, why do I need to fill this out? Don't our kids eat for free? Why do I need to fill out a form, right? And so those are the challenges that we're still dealing with, right? We're sending mixed messages. It's like, we're gonna feed your kids. And it's like, but we need the form. They're like, but if you're already telling me that it's free, why don't you need the form? Mm-hmm. And it's kind of hard to explain that. It's like, well, we need the form because the federal government needs it. Well, that becomes, parents are like, well, hold on, wait a second. I'm just being honest. I'm listen, that's the reality. So we'll continue to figure out ways to, exactly.
What?
Yeah. Please.
There are other benefits actually to the families for filling out that application that really have nothing to do with school. If they qualify, if they're eligible, and they are considered eligible for free and reduced, they are also eligible for a program with the state of California to have a 529C savings plan that is seeded by the state of California up to $500. So a family who has a kindergartner who would qualify can also apply for this $500 savings account for their child's education. There are also other opportunities to have be eligible for free internet at their home as well. It's a way of qualifying a family considered low income by the threshold determined by the state. So although we don't deliver those services, but we do collect the form and identify them in our system that way. So it's helpful for families to know about that too, which we're sending that message out as much as we can and send out a few letters around that. And we'll continue that messaging.
That's going to be
my question, like, how do you get that out to the parents? And, I mean, that alone would want you to apply, I mean, to fill out the application, so.
Absolutely, and that's been part of our communication strategy. We've been sending out letters and sending out communications, and especially coming in the new year, because everybody has to go through it again, right? So during registration in July, when all families will be required to go through and verify their data online, there also is a link to go and fill out that application there. We'll send out communication around that as well.
Does that also be affected by Title I schools? Like, for instance, like you have the issue with, some of our schools are not Title I schools
Correct.
anymore? Okay.
So schools are allocated, have a Title I program, which is a federal program. That's federal dollars that go to schools that have, based on the number of free students who qualify for free and reduced. At this time, Royal Oaks and Valley View do not qualify because they do not have the numbers for free and reduced students.
Thank you.
And I like to also, oh, you wanna ask something? Okay. I was wondering, when when parents come and ask for their students to be released from here to another district, do we have any plan or any way to inform all the programs that we have in our district, or we just check what they are requesting and approve or not approve? How did that go? I'm sorry. Okay.
Mr. Crosby.
Through our student services,
Thank you.
I keep pushing the wrong end for you.
He's silencing you, Rosa.
Through our student services and our director, Ms. Hoffman, we give them all of our programs, and for people to leave our district, they have to, one of the ways is they have to show that another district has a program we don't have. We have most programs, and so that would be denied just based on that. And where we go through and we make sure that to release any student, it's by the letter of the law, where we deny everyone else, so that we are in a business to try to keep our kids and show the great programs that we have here in Duarte.
Thank you. I just want to make a comment, and it is that one, I was talking to a parent, a good friend of mine, that he was telling me that he bought a house in Glendora to be able to enroll his kids in Glendora School District. So he bought a house up in the hills, and he was telling me just a couple of weeks ago, that now I have to drive to Royal Oaks to bring my kids to Duarte. I sold my house here in Duarte. I will pay $12,000 for house insurance this year, and next year they will not provide house insurance for me because I live by the hills and all the fires, and I have to sacrifice now driving back to Royal Oaks to be able to enroll my kids also at CSR. So it is amazing what we're doing. I mean, what all of us are doing in providing the information of one of the best chances the kids might have to enroll at CSR is to come now to 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So I just, people call me or tell me what's going on in their life, and the reason that I ask, what do we do to retain our students, is because I know that we provide really quality of services. And so, thank you, Mr. President.
Go ahead, Mr. Bell.
One quick, Arceli and Kevin Morris, please tell them thank you, thank you, thank you. I've worked in the international program for a long time, and those two young people right there have been so strong, and they have almost rescued us this year. So tell them that this board, Mr. Bell said, thank you for the work they've done. And Arceli is, I don't know where she came from, but she came so prepared, and absolutely a fantastic young lady. Kevin too, tell Kevin, don't get mad, but they have done a sterling job. And I want to say, make sure they know we thank them. This board thanked them.
Just one more thing.
Please,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry. This is a very serious question for me. Many years ago, we decided to not even have dinner during our board meetings because we were struggling. And I'm talking about 20-some years ago, right? And so, but my question to you is, out of unrestricted money, can we afford to attend CSBA conferences and to provide dinner? And it will say, maybe you say I had a dumb question, but I think pennies count. To me, that's very important. I know that we learn a lot, CSBA. It is a lot of information that we receive, and it's not just to go and have fun. I know how exhausted I am at the end of the day, but it's a question that I have in my heart and my mind for you.
Can I, I was going to say, let me just give one piece of context I think is important before she says what she's going to say. This year, CSBA is in Anaheim, so it inherently is going to be significantly less cost because you won't need hotel accommodations, you won't need airfare. It's down the street. So there is that. Just saying.
Okay.
Just saying. I'm just saying. Now, please, by all means.
Always, okay, I'll just be honest. No. I don't think I think maybe we should pick 2 members. We were having a conference today in my office about conferences. It wasn't about this particular conference, but about all the conferences that we do and where we are. Maybe we should have 2 people go, at a time. It shouldn't be a delegation of 5 teachers at this point. It doesn't look well. To me, it's about the aesthetics of things too. So do we need 7, 8 people going with their families, dinners, lunches? It's expensive, and it's a write-off, and people see it. People see it in the district office. And I mean, no matter how confidential they are, they see it, and there's comments made. And so what happens, that goes out into the community. And so I would say, under my recommendation, that if a conference, if CSBA, you had to go, 2 people, maybe the president and vice president, president and secretary, alternate like that until we get back on our feet. That's my recommendation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, board?
We can't go nowhere, saying we're
Yeah. All right. All right, sounds good. Well, if there's no further discussion, board, we'll go ahead and vote on this 3rd interim budget.
You just finished item number 6, Mr. President, so you want to
So we had our
introduce
presentation.
item 7, yes.
So now, okay, so we'll go on to accepting, accepting the 3rd interim financial report. So is there a motion to accept the 3rd interim financial report?
Move to approve.
Okay.
So moved by Mr. Bell, second by Ms. Holguin. Any discussion, board, beyond what we've had? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that passes. All right, so now we are moving on to item number 8, which is closed session. So I believe we will recess to the conference room in the back.
That's correct. So members of the board, at this time, you'll recess to closed session, and you'll have one item to consider. It's conference with labor negotiator. Do have legal counsel who will be present with you in closed session, and then you'll report out anything that is reportable. You'll do that after the fact, back in this space.
Okay.
Staff will retire home for the evening. Our services are no longer needed.
Why they have to go?